Oh, okay. Go.
Point it at Hugo.
Yeah, film it.
Point the camera at Hugo. There you go. Kind of.
Very good.
Call to attention.
This is a word from the Energy Conference with numerous individuals present today. Eric Bissell is leading us, and we want to talk about energy in the expressions thereof, and on the board you will see some sites that you can look up and find different comments and depictions of energy. So we'll leave that up there for a little while, make some notes. It will disappear as we begin to talk. Eric, welcome. Shalom, and shalom to anyone who's watching.
A number of people wanted to be here who couldn't be here in Ohio. 2018, Shavuot was yesterday, day 50. So we're making this available for anybody interested in pursuing the subject matter regarding the concepts of energy, resonance, frequency, vibration. Nikola Tesla said, if you want to discover the keys of the universe, investigate energy, resonance, vibration, frequency. I mean, that was his quote. I didn't realize it when we were putting together this conference, but Einstein said something similar. I'll add one thing also here, 432 as opposed to 440. What we've got on this list here, just for people, is if I elaborate on all these subjects, it'll burn a lot of your time. So we're going to talk about other things. Anybody that wants to look into these matters, these are suggested references, any one of which, if you look at, it'll open up a whole different world to you. A fellow by the name of Len Horowitz has a book called Book of 528. If you punch in the number 528 or 528 love, you'll get a host, a whole bunch of different websites that come up. Just use this for an example. Years ago, there's a fellow by the name of Dr. Joseph Puleo. He wrote a book that was published by Len Horowitz's tetrahedron.org publishing house. The book was called Healing Codes for the Coming Apocalypse. In it, Dr. Joseph Puleo discussed or elaborated on his, call it the discovery of the solfeggio. Here, I'll write this down here, solfeggio. The solfeggio scale of notes. 528 is one of the frequencies in the solfeggio scale. If you read Puleo's book, it tells you all about it. Well, Dr. Puleo is now deceased, but Len Horowitz wrote this book of 528 about that. And if you go to Book of 528, you'll see Len Horowitz discussing the matter in numerous YouTube videos. So for me to tell you about it is a waste of your time, waste of our time here and now. Go there and look. Now that being said, as we mentioned yesterday, there's this concept of the Moedim. And to make a matter clear, you could watch that. It turns out to be about 2 hours we were talking yesterday at Shavuot. The reason why I was talking about the Moedim is that I consider that the Moedim, the word in Hebrew, Paleo-Hebrew, Mem, Vav, Ayin, Dalet, that's Moed, and then the pluralize it, make it multiple, is Moedim, and there happen to be 7 of them, and it happens to be referenced in Leviticus 23. What I'm trying to make the point of here with this thing about energy and frequency and vibration and resonance all these people represented by these various sites will confirm, ratify, validate the notion that everything that exists in the physical universe actually is not physical at all. It's vibration. And for some reason, even the elements themselves that you'll find on the periodic table of elements that we think of as metals or gases or solids or even liquids are not. They're composed of electrons and protons, which are composed of quarks, which are composed of, some think, strings that are wiggling, and the strings are not mass, they're information. So I did a video a couple months ago that you'll find at erictology.net, or you'll also find it at a website, a YouTube site called Mountain Air, A-I-R-E, and then the digit number 7. At Mountain Air 7 YouTube site, no spaces between the letters, you'll find some of the videos that we've done that may or may not be up on erictology.net. The point is, I did a video called Quantum Physics, String Theory, and the Virgin Birth. A strange collaboration of ideas, but I was explaining this notion of string theory, which some people don't believe is an explanation, but it's a conceptual explanation, that you have a string that wiggles and that masses together to make quarks, which mass together to form an electron, which mass together in contrast oppositional energy to protons, which form the elements, which form the compounds which make up the universe. So at the heart of it, at the root of it, is a wiggling string of information. Well, information is an idea, you call it. It's not even really an idea, it's information. Well, a computer runs off of information. We put them into ones and zeros, or pluses and minuses, or oscillation of up or down, and we'll call these ones and we'll call those zeros, but it's just two different, it's a binary code of a sequence of pulses, you might say. That's what composes the physical universe. There's no such thing as physicality. As a matter of fact, some physicists will tell you, my hand never touched this board, though you saw it and heard it, but the closer you look at what composes this and what composes this is that the two can never talk. There's always some kind of a barrier in between them.
What made the sound?
That's a question. What did make the sound?
Your impact of the board, of not touching the board.
But if I never touched the board, what generated the sound? And sound is more
Yeah,
wavelengths.
Yeah, that's the question.
What did? Can you give us the answer? Gotcha.
Your close approach.
How about lack of congruity of the different wavelengths?
So why I say gotcha is because John is wonderful at getting to the heart of the matter and pushing through the presumptions by asking questions of, you say something and it's like, well, where's the proof of that? Is that really so? Did that really happen? And all of a sudden you say, gee, I don't know what the proof is. I don't know if it really happened. So for him to say what made the sound, it's actually the close approach that generates, that you might say almost squeezes out other vibrations that we register as sound. Is that correct?
Sounds good, yeah.
Sounds good to him.
Sounds good.
I was close enough to approaching the true explanation that it sounded good. So that was a metaphor of explanation of what is actually happening. So what I'm trying to say by all this is that our perception of reality isn't. What we think we are perceiving of reality is not true, and it's not actually a perception. It's a fantasy imagination of making sense of things that we really don't understand. And I heard somebody say the other day that 80% of science is not true. I think Dr. Alfonso Manzo said that, and we recorded his talk just the other day, which will be available. I've also heard it said that if you can't believe 80% of what you hear, is that true? Well, only 80% of that sentence is true, or 20% of that sentence is true. That most, we'll just say most, a large degree of the information you get on the internet is false. A lot of what you'll then hear from me saying is also false. What does that mean? Well, you can find corroborating voices by listening to these sites. But let me say this, well, the purpose of this energy conference, we're calling it, is to say what I found in listening to reading about Len Horowitz's perspective. As I mentioned the other day, he's not encouraging anybody that I know of to speak Hebrew or learn Hebrew. Why? Why doesn't he do that? Because he has a different mind, a different agenda, a different purpose in what he's saying. But one thing he is saying, there's this one sentence I'll extract from his books. He said, when 144,000 people sing the Song of Moses in the solfeggio scale, it'll shift the earth on its axis. Now you might hear those words and say, this guy's insane, or this guy's a wacko, or this guy sounds like a, and now give yourself the title, the label, a New Ager, a Christian Scientist, a cultist, a Judaizer, a what?
Erectologist.
An erectologist? What I'm saying is that because we hear strange things, we give weird labels. Therefore, we can now assign them to the shelf on the bookcase of weird labels that we have to pay no more attention to, because that's just weird science. What's that?
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
We've gone 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
The point is, what I'm trying to say is,
Never mind.
Stan Tenen here of Miru is an incredibly brilliant astrophysicist who learned Hebrew because he was raised in a Jewish environment, and yet he, last I talked to him 10 years ago, said that he had no regard for the literal narrative of the translation of the Hebrew letters found in the scripture, but he was looking at the sequence of letters. This is his book here, The Alphabet That Changed the World. Miru, M-E-R-U is the name of his organization, but I highly recommend it, but you're not going to hear how to read Hebrew. So all these guys have a piece of the puzzle. Chladni is a guy who did some studies back in the late 1800s, very similar to cymatics, where if you put sand or salt, some sort of crystalline rock matter on a piece of metal, and then play music or draw a violin bow against it at certain pure frequencies, like the 528 or maybe 432 compared to 440 hertz. These are hertz calibrations. It'll form different geometric patterns. Why? Just for what it's worth, Len Horowitz did some work in association with Dr. Emoto. Messages in Water. I know a biophysicist who said, hey, wait a minute, Dr. Emoto's work hasn't been able to be duplicated, therefore it's invalidated. Is it invalidated or is it not? I don't know, you make the decision. The point is, I'm just pointing people into a direction where if they want to know more, to say, is this, put it on the shelf category of nonsense or skeptical. Chladni proved that sound interfaces with geometry. Vibration affects material composition. That's what we're talking about. What we're saying is things that are spoken or sung musically, or even the chirping of a bird, as we mentioned the other day, sound and light are the same thing. They're vibrating. Are photons, waves, or particles? They still can't even say. They're both the same somehow, but they're both different somehow. That goes back to the concept of saying in the Hebrew alphabet is if Aleph is an idea and Bet is the manifestation, if Aleph represents the Father and Bet represents the Son, is that two different Elohim, or is it two different aspects of one Elohim? We were having this discussion with a fellow yesterday, and that little question right there is enough to cause religious division and murders, one sect to another. Just because of the way you try to articulate what you think is a description of reality if it conflicts with another person's conception, perception of how they interpret and categorize reality. There's aggression, there's conflict, there's death. So what I'm saying is, these cymatics is basically what Chladni did, only using water. Mandelbrot set is in Fibonacci sequence, has to do with fractals, which is geometry, which also, if you look up that, there's a guy named Dr. Jason Lisle, Jason Lisle, and he did a wonderful presentation on PowerPoint, so it's a multiply, I mean, there's numerous different presentations. Being PowerPoint, I think they're probably all pretty similar. At a church, he's a Christian astrophysicist. Incredible. Showing you the geometry of some number sequences, and if you don't like mathematics, the first few minutes of his talk he has to deal with math, but he gets past it, but he has to use that as a setup so you can appreciate what he's talking about. This is responsible for the design of the leaves of the tree, the clouds, the blades of grass, and even our bodies. It gets into how DNA is designed. But again, that's an hour and 5-minute talk he does, and then there's numerous other videos. But I'm just suggesting that this is a place to go to say, this is fascinating, this is intriguing, this is compelling, and it just validates that the way that Yahweh, our Elohim, made the universe appears physical, but it's actually geometrical frequencies engaging each other, one bouncing off the other. Yeah?
There is a field called sacred geometry.
The field called sacred geometry, let me just give a warning. Sacred geometry. If you look up 528, you'll see a bunch of stuff regarding sacred geometry, and you'll also find a bunch of stuff regarding the New Age, and you'll find a bunch of stuff regarding Kabbalah. This has nothing to do with that. But if the people who have become disgusted with religion or church or Christianity or even Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, whatever ism you want to put it, they're still knowing that there's a truth to be found in the structure of natural pieces of the universe. And if they're looking for a way to make sense of it, those guys are referring to sacred geometry, and those guys who are looking for where is their energy, where is their effect, how do we do this? Those guys are thrown into the category of New Age and Kabbalah, and maybe even witchcraft or sorcery. And so all of a sudden you'll see that people who are interested in these things, a bunch of people interested in those things overlap. And so some people will say have nothing to do with it, and they'll throw all this stuff in the garbage. So here's a list of things you can throw in the garbage if you want to. But here's also a list of places that you can look if you want to find that the people who know that this is a reality and know that it's okay to look there overlaps with other people looking who have no intention of right and wrong, love versus evil, righteousness versus
Truth and counterfeit. The
truth and counterfeit.
first.
This is what we were talking about yesterday. How do you know whether you're on to the truth? It has to do with the Moedim. So the Moedim of Leviticus 23, as I was mentioning yesterday in our talk, I believe is the plumb line by which we can know whether we are on the right track or lost in a cult or into some sort of sorcery, which Yahuwah said have nothing to do with. There's a fellow that called up on the phone last night and said, what about the contact of, you might say, praying for the dead or listening to the dead, or, you know, you could just say, well, that's the field of necromancy. Yahweh says it has nothing to do with that. So, searching out ancestral lines, praying for the status of the dead, as far as I know, we're supposed to have nothing to do with that. End of story, closed book. I'm not even going to deal with that. So, the Electric Universe group, some of those people believe weird things. That doesn't mean that the concept that the universe is an electric function is wrong. In fact, they say there's no such thing as gravity. They say gravity is actually a manifestation of electromagnetic exchanges between bodies or masses or planets or whatever you want to say. Look at that. If you want hours of information, hours of listening to different conferences. One of their go-to guys is a guy named Victor Schauberger and Emanuel Velikovsky. Wrote a book called Worlds in Collision, Ages in Chaos. A couple other books. Schauberger, Nature as Teacher. Late 1800s, again, there's a lot of stuff going on back in that era. Same era as Tesla, who was doing research as to the way the world, the universe is made such that this heat from the sun, gosh, it's just hot. No, it's not just hot. It's also potential energy that if we knew how to capture it, now we have solar panels, but that's almost like cavemen.
Yeah.
Solar panels we think is high tech, it's very low tech. The people that know shut him down and shut him down and shut him down and shut down most of these other guys because they don't want us to know. What? Us? Yeah, the peasants. I'm trying to give you sources of information to say, if there was a way to knock down the statue of Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar's vision that we talked about yesterday, you shut down the power grid, you shut down the petroleum, the gas stations, you shut down the highways. Now what are we going to do? How are we going to eat? How are we going to warm ourselves? How are we going to even go to the hardware store and buy construction materials to build a house with? You're not going to do it unless there's a whole other system. I think Yahweh has provided a way for billions of people to live on the face of the earth, which maybe has nothing to do with the existing social and science system that we see around us right now. And I think that these guys are onto something, but maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe this is all a bunch of hooey. But maybe this is exactly where the answer lies. But it's not in the Kabbalah New Age sorcery of these matters. It's in these matters which synchronize with the Moedim. So what I'm suggesting about all this is that I don't know if any of these guys tell anybody to regard Hebrew or the name of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh or the Moedim of the people of Israel. Maybe none of them do. However, the truth of the matter is that whatever these guys have found, the truth of it will correlate with the Moedim like notes of a three-noted chord resonate with each other. Like you can play the notes on a piano or a guitar on the 8-note scale of 1, 4, and 5, and they just sound, or chord progression, or 1, 3, and 5, and they just sound good because they harmonize, they synchronize together. So what I'm saying is that the truth of whatever these guys have found, put in synchrony with the truth of the Moedim, is, I believe, where the truth lies. But does the truth lie? No, the truth doesn't lie. The truth tells the truth. But other people take what the truth is. I was playing off of words there. It's just a little joke.
May I be the accident here?
Sure.
That seems pure Chinese.
It's what?
That sounds like Chinese to say that the truth you will recognize because it would be aligned with the Moedim. Could you help this? Like,
How is the truth synchronized with the Moedim?
how can you prove that to me?
How can I prove that to you?
That the Moedim confirms the truth.
Let me just run through the list real quick.
Okay.
At erichtology.net, that's my website that has a bunch of videos and has a bunch of things written and whatever's there, is to say, I've been trying to explain this for the last few years, and perhaps I haven't done a good job explaining it. So if you were to look at the videos here, we'll give it one more shot in just a moment. But that's what's at erichtology.net. At erichtology.net is also recently put up the entire Bible of the 66 books written in Paleo Hebrew that people are welcome to download off your computer. Go there, go to the Erectology workbook, and it's written with spaces in between, so you can. It's written in Paleo-Hebrew, no English translation, so you can figure out your own translation. Just real quick before we get to that, Professor Thomas Gold, his subject matter is suppressed information. Dutch Sense, his information is earthquakes and energy. Now the reason why I put that up there is because this guy has figured out how to read the vibrations that are pushing on the bedrock of the earth, and when you can find its registration, you can see that it's going to project, and an earthquake is going to happen over here, and he's found that it works. What I'm trying to say is, in the physical realm, the way the earth is built is a fractal model of what's happening in the sociology, the interactions of people groups, and also personally. So if there's pressures here, it's going to come out there. People who take certain drugs, like you'll see photos of people, movie stars, they end up doing coke or meth, and a couple of years later, their physical bodies are distorted, and there's open sores, and their teeth start corrupting, and it's like, wow, what happened? How did that happen? Because drugs are a certain frequency and a type of energy, and when it goes in here, the body reacts over there, and it becomes distorted. The word, as we discussed the other day, for the Hebrew language is shafah, sheen, pei, hey, lip, language, tongue, but it also means to restore to health and cure from lunacy. So me and my imagination is saying, I believe if you learn how to speak Hebrew and actively say Hebrew things and moed, do the Hebrew culture, it will make a correction of the DNA, of the physicality, and of the mind of the person doing it. So if you surround yourself, you might say, with listening to Hebrew words or walking out the Moedim. How do you walk out the Moedim? Well, for the last 50 days, we've been counting. Day 1, day 2, day 3, 7 sevens. That's a total of 49. Then he says count 50. So some people think, oh, you're supposed to count 49 and then start counting another 50. So some people are not going to regard Shavuot until another 50 days out. So this is day 1 of the next counting of 50, or day 2 actually. Count 49 and then count 50. That's what some people are doing. So their celebration of the Shavuot Moed will be in the middle of the summer. Are they wrong? I'm not going to say they're wrong. It's a different frame of mind. But at least they're counting. And at least they're trying to read the scripture and do it. So what I'm saying is that there's something about Hebrew being the Creator's invention of his own language, that he built the universe by those Hebrew words, those Hebrew letters. We, our bodies, our minds, our breath, everything is composed of Hebrew letters. Because the Hebrew letters find their bearing, their meaning, their place, according to the Moedim, which is what I mentioned yesterday, then if we keep the Moedim, like gears meshing, synchronizing, teeth of the gears, we are fit, harmonically resonant with the fabric of the universe and the heart and mind of Elohim who made the universe. Because the word moed means jewel, ornamentation, appointed place, meeting, witness, testimony, and also it means the thing which is ripped off and stolen, the beauty, the booty. Like pirates come and steal what? They steal something valuable. So he made the things that are valuable able to be stolen, ripped off, and exchanged. They're designed to be ripped off. So, for us to be given the holy days of Sunday, Christmas, Easter, and All Saints' Day, Halloween, those are replacement counterfeits, which he designed and allowed to happen on purpose because his people Israel cared nothing for the truth. So for us to say, let's go back to the truth is to go back to walk out the Moedim in Leviticus 23. Yom HaShabbat, the seventh-day Sabbath, is the first mention of these appointed places of his treasure. Why are they appointed places of his treasure? Because just like the solfeggio scale, these are resonant frequencies or tones which are fixtures of wholeness, wellness, life, sanity. And as Len Horowitz says, 528, when your cells are vibrating at 528, that's the feeling of love. It's also this color of green grass, a kind of a yellowish green. In other words, what am I seeing actually when I look at green grass? The frequency of 528 is going into my eyeballs and registering in my brain, and my brain says, oh, what is that? And when my brain says, oh, here it is, and now my brain has to vibrate at 528 to perceive exactly what this is, and when it finds, oh yeah, it's like bees doing a dance. One bee goes out, and it finds the honey, the certain type of flowers, say, not the honey pollen, but then it comes back to the hive, and it starts wiggling and doing this little dance, and say, what's it trying to say? And it can tell exactly the direction, the number of miles, or the number of the amount of distance, so all the other bees can go there and find it. So what I'm saying is, I'm using that analogy that when we have incoming information, our brain now has to interpret the information by synchronizing with it. And going, oh, now I get it, but now we're there so that we can be one with it. So I think that the Creator, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, gave us the Moedim to facilitate or make that a real event happening, so that when we walk out the Moedim, which is to say on the 14th day of the first month, when we keep the Passover, we're in sync with Him.
Yeah, realize.
In other words, like one bee understanding from the first bee that, oh, if I fly 20 yards that direction, I will find a certain yellow flower. Okay, let's go do it. That means communication has happened. But if the first bee says, hey, 20 yards that way is a certain yellow flower, and the second bee thinks he is saying